What's up, bosses? Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, Jonte, and today we have the founder of LMB Law Offices PC, Miss Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, Esquire. Now, Miss Mitchell-Blackwell is an award-winning attorney and the visionary behind the Light Legacy Stewardship and the Sacred Self-Leadership Movement, and she's bringing all the decrees on what she means business. So, ladies, grab those cups and those notepads and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Miss Mitchell Blackwell.
Thank you so much, John Tay. I am thrilled to be here.
Yes, ma'am. I am super excited to have you here. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's go. So, a lot of women entrepreneurs think of estate planning as something you do later. What shifted for you that made you treat it as a business priority right now, though?
Yes. So thank you for kicking it off from there. So I will give you the answer and then I will come back into it. I wanted my legacy for my clients, my family, for my child to be one of peace, love, and fulfillment and prosperity, and not chaos and confusion. And unfortunately, along with many people, I was not leading in life and running my business in a way that was going to ensure that happened. So I have had a beautiful life. I have done all the things that you read in my bio. The things that were not in the bio, though, were that I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, that it took a long time, like almost 2 years, for my doctors to figure out exactly what was wrong with me, because on the outside, I was the picture of health, and I'm sure your audience can relate to that. As women, we are used to showing up even when we're sick, when we are tired, when we are running on empty, and the worse we feel, the more time we put into our looks to make sure we don't look like what we feel like. And so I was going to the doctor and they were doing these tests and they were not coming back the way they needed to. But I did not equate getting my paperwork and my business in order with something that I needed to do because I was in my mid 30s. I looked real good. I was in the best physical shape of my life. I was literally running marathons. And so I equated the work that I was doing for other people now, Jonte, as work for those who were terminally ill or who were elderly. I did not equate that to someone like me until it's always a part one and part two. Part one was my daughter, who had not quite turned 6, but she was just a few months before, found me passed out in the middle of the floor from exhaustion. And I she, thank God, did not realize that I was too tired to get up. She just thought that I fell asleep there. And so she put her little baby blanket on me and put her pillow under my head and kissed me on the forehead and said, "Good night, mama." And the only thing that I had strength to do was to say, "Good night, baby." I couldn't put my child to bed. But in most of these major shifts in consciousness, it's not just one thing that lets you know that something needs to change and precipitates the action to make the change. It's a two-parter. And so my second part came a few months later when routine tests, trying to still figure out what's going on. The tech comes back with these test results that say that I have a bowel obstruction that we would later find out was due to the endometriosis. And I had to have emergency surgery right there. Jonte, life stopped for me. It all stopped for me because it was Friday afternoon, 3 p.m., Memorial Day weekend. My husband is out of town. My mother lives an hour away. And the tech is telling me that my surgery is scheduled at 5 o'clock in 2 hours. I had no plan for my child who was going to go get her from daycare. I had no plan for my clients who was going to continue on with the work if I didn't come through this surgery because this was serious. This was a sign releases. You might not make it through this kind of a situation. And I had made no plan for everything that I had worked for, my home. my assets. And that's when it hit me that, oh, I need to do this for me. And when it was reframed for me that way, I said to God, if you bring me through this, I will get right and I will get my paperwork in order. He did. And so I did. And in talking with your girlfriends and colleagues, because I was down for a while, this was not a you just have surgery and then you're better. This took time for me to be properly diagnosed, to have the surgeries, because that was just the first one, and then to be on the road to recovery. And so I'm talking to people because I'm not where I normally am. I'm not out and about. I'm not as cheery and happy because I'm in pain. I'm trying to recover. And there were more people who were in my boat than were on the other side. So here we were, successful, educated, experienced, and had not taken care of the thing that mattered most and why we work so hard, the people we love. And so that is what got me to this side of through, which is my family. So protecting the people that I love, the things that I've worked so hard for, preserving them so that they can actually transition, and then ensuring that when my family speaks my name in 2 or 3 generations, when I'm no longer on this side, that it is with love and with peace and not, honestly, chaos. I don't want my name synonymous with confusion. And so that's how we got here.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience and with me as well, because you don't, when you're in your early 20s and your early 30s and you're working your dream jobs and you're out there, we as women, we know how we are. We going hard in our dream jobs. And you don't think about your kids or you don't think about your family in those times because I'm young, I can do this. And then you have those moments where you go through those things and it does. It causes you to think. And me being 36, I wasn't thinking about it at the age of 30 either. And then I had that attempt on suicide. And it really changed my whole perspective on what I was doing for my daughter. And just in case something were to happen to me, I needed to have that paperwork. I needed to have something in line. So I definitely understand and identify with what you just said, Ms. Mitchell Blackwell, on why we need to have those things in place because you just never know, y'all. You just never know. It don't matter how young you are or how old you may think you are. You just real deal never know. So let's talk about your light legacy stewardship. How did that concept come to life, and what gap were you seeing in traditional estate planning that needed to be filled?
Yes. So this came from a vision. I am an ordained minister, and every morning start my day with meditation and prayer. And so I take the time to not just tell God what's going on and what I foresee I need, but I sit quietly and I listen. And so sometimes, most of the time actually, during that listening session, I get answers to questions, or I will receive what I call a divine download of what needs to happen so I can be in service in everything that I do, including my work in the law. Because it's important to me that every person that I touch, even if it's just for a moment, that they feel the love and light of our great creator. And we don't always understand that our jobs, our careers, our professions, our businesses are ways for us to do that. And so that's when I heard light legacy leadership, light legacy stewardship, self care that is sacred. And I asked for further clarification because I'm just like, this sounds very inward facing as opposed to outward facing, which is how I was raised and how most people that I meet are. We're taught that if we focus on everybody and everything and make sure their needs are taken care of, then eventually we will have our needs taken care of. But it was a total flipping of the framework which was, no, you take care of you first. You make sure that your needs are taken care of. Then you're coming from a very strong base, a firm foundation for you to then share that with other people. And that's sustainable. That's the basis of the legacy. And so the light is love. And the stewardship is being responsible over everything for which we have been given. So that's our skills, gifts, talents, as well as our resources and the ways that we accumulate those resources, which is our businesses and our careers. When I sit down with someone to ensure that they are hitting all of those spaces, I ask them the key question: who are you living for? And for most people, it's for somebody they love, their kids, their spouse, or the person that they are in covenant or commitment with, parents sometimes. But very rarely does the person say for myself. And so I take them through a journey of explaining the paperwork and the documents that we go through, the trust, which is a transition of all assets from one generation to the next, the advance directive, which is the medical power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, the transfers of the secure interest, so your ownership in your business into your trust or to your LLC. And we go through these so that a person understands that all of these things start with them. See, we don't get to any of the paperwork, we don't get to any of the transition without first starting with ourselves. And so we have to become very organized and disciplined, at least for the moments when we're going through all of this. We really have to take stock of the people in our circle because with all of these documents, we are assigning trustees for the trust, executors for your will, agents for the advance directive and the power of attorney. If you have children who are minors, we're also looking at conservatorship as well as guardianship. We're not giving that kind of power or access to anybody who is not trustworthy. So it really makes us look at our circle and say, if I wouldn't trust you with my children, with my parents, with my things, are we really friends? Should we still be in communication as tightly as we are? And it's not to say that many people cut people off, but I can honestly say that some people have looked at their circle very differently after sitting down and having that conversation. Relatively, because you're now weeding through your connections, you're making very different decisions on how you spend your time. And when you have more time freed up from obligations that don't serve you, don't serve your business, you don't have time for rest, restoration. You have time to do things that make your heart smile. You have more time to spend with the people that you love. And so now your legacy is not just stuff. And don't get me wrong, I like cars, castles, clothes, and cash too, the four C's. But we don't work for those things. We work so that we have things to enjoy our lives with. And a lot of times we get those mixed up. And I'm including myself in we. There's no judgment here because most of us, were raised, if we work hard, we'll be successful and we'll live happily ever after. And it's not until we've been on that hamster wheel for quite some time that we realize that happily ever after isn't coming until we get off the wheel and redefine what success really means. And it's not stuff. It really is peace, joy, and fulfillment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And oh, I just love how you put that because you're thinking about wills and things like that. You're not necessarily I use myself for example. My dad, he got sick and his lawyer told him, hey, you need to start getting things in place. And so my dad rushed and just put anybody over his estate. And sure enough, me and my sisters lost everything after he passed away. There was nothing left from my daddy's legacy left behind but lost. And that's a great point you made. It's not necessarily about the money and the cars and the clothes and things like that. Cause that's all we have left is the memories and the joy that our dad brought to us. And, you know, y'all, she hit a nerve with that one because I've been through that process of knowing you have to really search through your circle. You got to really know your circle because even if it's your sibling, make sure that sibling relationship is that sibling relationship you think it is. Because in my case, it was my uncle that took everything from us. So you definitely have to reanalyze those relationships, especially when it's coming to something like that and it's going to be over your minor children or over your kids period, if even if they are grown, and you have to reevaluate that spouse because like you've been married for 30 years, but it's okay, here we are talking about this. Can I really trust you to do right by everybody with it? But again, I still have the memories of my dad. I still have that joy, and that's literally what I take with me everywhere I go. And no money or clothes could ever replace those memories I had with my dad. So I totally agree with you. It's not about the money and the cars and the clothes and all that. You got the memories. Those are priceless, honestly.
That's right. I'm really glad that you brought that up. One of the things that we encourage people to do in my firm is part of the estate planning package is the digital assets. Sit down, record your story yourself. We have these amazing devices, these phones. Just set it up and talk about your childhood. Talk about your parents. Talk about your hardships, not just the good things, because those are the things that are going to sustain your lineal descendants through the years. And they will have access to that always. They'll be able to hear your voice and hear the warmth and the compassion and to see your face and to watch the expressions and remember those things warmly. And we don't put enough stock, I believe, in the family stories, in our history. And those things, they truly are priceless. There's no putting a dollar sign on that.
And that's a great point to make. We use our phones for everything. I know, yep, somebody's right now recording themselves to post on Facebook. You can use that same phone and record a message to your family to leave behind. Or if you don't feel like being comfortable recording yourself, you can always go to your lawyer or go to somebody that you feel comfortable with recording and editing or whatever it is that you may want to do with the video. And but leave something behind. I can remember when my dad passed, the only thing I had to hear his voice was a interview he had did. But that was still something left behind because I could play it over and over again and hear my dad's voice. So I'm telling you, even if it's just a voice recording from an interview or a voice recording of you saying I love you on a voicemail or something like that is literally something to hold on to. That's a memory. And I lost it because of accident. And I'm telling you, like I wish my dad had just recorded a video for us back then. But you hit on it, Miss Lynita. Just having a video or having a voice that means so much more to you than, again, the clothes, the cars, and all of that. So thank you for hitting on that one too, because a lot of people don't think they can record and leave something behind like that. So let's talk about building a brand. When someone is building a brand and they're focused on visibility and revenue, how should they be thinking about ownership, control, and long protection behind the scenes?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question. Let me tell you, when I started doing estate planning almost 20 years ago now, we did not have that anywhere in our purview because at that point, we were just stepping into the age of Kindle, which was owned by Amazon, right? And so people had to go through a traditional publishing house. Copyright.gov was really just getting to a place where you could do your own work, as well as the patent website as well. And so you didn't have a whole lot of options when it came to getting your information taken care of yourself. You really had to hire someone. And even when you did that, unless or until you had the paperwork within your estate planning documents, normally the will, there was a question mark as to who actually was going to inherit those properties because a copyright, a patent, a trademark, a brand mark, a CE mark, all those things have value. They're intangible because we can't necessarily touch them, but they absolutely have a price tag that can be applied. And it's just recently that many organizations like my own are even asking up front when we do the initial consultation, have you written a book? Do you have poetry? Do you have people in your family like your parents who have formulas? And some of you are saying to yourself, well, I don't have any of that. I'll make it brief, John Tay, I promise, but this is a story that I think most people will resonate with. Zora Neale Hurston wrote, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Most people had the opportunity to read that book when they were in high school, English. But when Miss Hurston wrote that book, it did not take off. As a matter of fact, it was a flop. And she died a pauper. She was buried in a pauper's grave. And as a matter of fact, at the end of her life, she was homeless and she was living in a boarding house for people who had nothing. Fast forward 20 years, Octavia Butler used Miss Hurston's book as the basis for her thesis for her master's degree. So it was this resurgence and interest in not just the Harlem Renaissance, but the times and the work that was created during that and Miss Hurston's book. But who owned the copyright? If her family had been given that copyright, how wealthy would they be today? So the things that we create sometimes are not necessarily going to benefit us right this moment. Sometimes it might be a generation, and a generation is 20 years, right? It might be a generation or more that gets the benefit. And for some of you who are thinking, well, that doesn't relate to me, catch this. If you're a person of faith, you've heard your grandmother's prayers are still guiding you and covering you. This work that you're doing is still a prayer. The things that you're doing right now are covering down through the generation. And that's one of the reasons that it is very important that we make sure that the things that we do are done in order, are done in love, and aligned with light. And a lot of people, we do not embrace that. And so when you're talking about branding, it's not just the colors and the feel and the texture. It's not just how you're showing up in the world and how you dress and the cool website and the cool sayings that you have. It's not the stump speeches, right? It really is what you're leaving behind and how you're making people feel. Maya Angelou used to say, people will forget what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. That is part of your legacy. And so, with protection, you absolutely do need to register those marks, the trademarks, the patents, the copyrights, the same marks. They need to be part of your estate plan. List them in the will if you don't want to do the trust. I would absolutely suggest you do a trust. Transfer ownership to the trust, and then the trustee will have all authority and power over them. But make a plan. It's
Absolutely.
not okay to just leave them out there willy-nilly. You absolutely must make a plan.
We can name several celebrities and we can even use Michael Jackson since the Michael movie just came out and what happened with his estate and all of that. And it goes back to who had ownership of his music at the time. And you see a lot more celebrity artists buying their ownership rights. And that's why they're doing it because they're leaving that legacy behind for their families. And they realize if something were to happen to me, this record company now owns everything I've done and my kids get none of it. So thank you for highlighting that. And even if we're not using music, if you're thinking you're a podcaster like myself and thinking, hey, that's just nothing, but if you actually have sponsorships or revenue coming into that podcast, that's still money. And you could trademark the name. That's a trademark, and people can use that. That is literally business, y'all, and how it actually really looks. And so if you're sitting here thinking, oh girl, my business ain't made nothing but $10, it may be worth $1 million in 20 years. You just never know.
You
You
never
honestly never
know.
know.
Yes, you absolutely never know.
Absolutely. And I thank you because that is something that a lot of business owners don't talk about because it's just I'm just a small business and I'm doing something for my kids and hopefully when my kids start doing it, it'll turn into a multi corporation when in reality you just never know. It may be your great grandkids that it turns into that multi corporation. But if you don't have the paperwork in line, your great grandkids won't inherit it. And I won't say it's a loss because somebody will get it, but it may not be the person you prefer to get it.
And that's what it is. That's
Absolutely.
it, that's exactly right. It may not be the person that you want to.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, you are a pastor, you are a speaker, you are a lawyer, you are a jack of all trades. But let's talk about the sacred self-leadership movement for a minute. How does self-leadership show up in your business decisions, especially when you're building something meant to outlive you?
Yet, so the first thing is I make sure that what I'm dreaming I want to do is consistent with the vision that Spirit has for me because they're not always the same. Now, the blessing though, at this point in my life, and I suspect that this is the case with most of the people in your audience, we've gotten to the place where we can identify the things that are totally inconsistent with our calling, right? And so we're not fooled up with anything that is going to drag us down, that's going to be negative, that's going to sap our energy. So that's a huge check mark. But that means that what is left is positive. And it makes it very difficult to sometimes distinguish exactly what needs to stay and what needs to go. So, one of the things that I do is every quarter, I take a look at everything that I'm involved in, and before I bring something new on, something else has to go. So I don't become overwhelmed. So that's the first thing. We have to make sure that we have the capacity to do what it is that we've been called to do, what we've been called to lead. So that's sacred in and of itself because that means that we have prioritized our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. So that's number one. The second thing is once I have determined that the thing that I've been called to do is truly in line with my calling, vision, mission, values, right? I sit down and I go in prayer and meditation. And I ask, okay, so what's next? What does this look implemented? Am I doing more speaking engagements around it, such as coming on podcasts like yours, Jonte? Am I doing any teachings? And if so, are these for charge? Are these to the community? Is it a mix of both? Am I founding a new organization like a nonprofit? Exactly what does it look like in order to be of service? And is this going to be something where I am charging on this side or that will come later? Because everything that I do, it is not supposed to be a price tag attached to it because it's going to lead to something else. And Regina Sunshine, who is an excellent businesswoman, she once said, God provides the provision for the vision. And so when you trust in that, you can take the steps you need to take, knowing that the money is going to be there for you to do a good job and to do it well enough so that when other people look, they can say, I can do that too. Because that's part of inspiration, that's part of motivation. There should not be a part of your journey where people look at you and think, that's great that she or he did that, but I could never. Which leads to the third thing. There has to be an air of transparency when we're talking about sacred self leadership. We have to be honest about the things that we go through. I remember when I first started, like really getting into that, it was very uncomfortable. And one of the first things I shared was during the economic downturn of '07, '08. I had just founded my law firm the year prior in December 2006. So I was riding high. Real estate market was hot. That was my primary business. And I was doing sometimes 20 closings a week. When the recession hit, John tell you I went to doing 20 a week to 2 in a month. And I don't care what kind of a saver you are. After a period of time, your finances are going to be decimated. My word. And I remember getting a call from both the car company and my mortgage company same week. And it sounded, I promise you, it sounded like the same lady, right? And I was so defeated that I said to both of them, I said, you know what? Where do you want me to leave the keys? Because I can't do this anymore. I was so depressed because I was just like, I stepped out here and I started this business and I prayed and I knew that I was doing the right thing. And so I felt knelt down on all fronts. And that lady said, ma'am, we don't want your house. Ma'am, we don't want your car. And her cadence, Jonte, was exactly the same. That's what I'm telling you. I really think the lady was working 2 jobs at the same
Sound like she will.
time. I can laugh about that now, but at the time, oh, I was rolling in the floor, as folks would say. I was crying, snot everywhere, right? But those are the kinds of things that people need to hear because I didn't quit my business. I kept working and I took on other business, which included estate planning, which folded so nicely with the real estate because after you buy a house, for most people, that is your most valuable asset. So, what do you need to do? You need to put it in a trust. You need a will. For many people who buy homes, 70%, they have families. So, we need to create the protection with the kids' protection plan. So, what happens to your children if you don't come home to make sure that they go to the person that you want and not to social services and foster care? You know, things that make my heart sing to know that my people, my clients are taken care of. But for that happening with the recession and my business going from 20 to 2, I wouldn't be here today talking with you about estate planning and sacred self leadership. I won't tell you that I would do it again because those were some hard times, but I would say I wouldn't take anything from my journey.
And talk about turning pain into purpose and resilience because a lot of people would have given up in that moment. They would have just said, you know what, let me go find another job or just let me step away from it. But you literally pivoted and said, you know what, I'm going to find a way to make this work. I'm going to find a way to get through this because a law degree is not cheap. And to literally just make that decision to walk away is tough. And so I applaud your resilience in that moment and literally just saying, you know what? There has to be another area. There has to be another lane. And you having the courage to believe through the process and again, faith. Cause y'all know I am a God fearing woman and that faith and believe it and why God put you there it will literally carry you to that moment where you feel like you have literally accomplished everything, y'all. It literally takes faith because those hard moments are gonna come. We can mention COVID. We can now mention inflation in this country. We have several different moments in our lives where we just have to rethink things, but don't give up. Keep going. I'm telling you, because even doctors, counselors, it's tough right now, but keep going. It's gonna get better. You may just have to add an extra thing to it that's already what you're already doing. If you're clinical mental health counseling, add that substance use to it. You never know. That may be what you needed to keep that business going, but just don't give up on it, y'all.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. And we're getting closer to the end of today's conversation. And y'all know I could talk about law all day. So let's talk about how you help clients. How do you help clients move from just having documents in place to actually creating a legacy that reflects their voice, their values, and their vision?
Yeah, so my process is different than most people. So my initial call, I have a calendar link that says we can talk for 15 minutes, but I don't generally share that with people. I have them complete my intake as if they have already hired me. And then when we sit down, I'm going through everything. And it does require a certain level of trust, but I'm a lawyer. Even if you don't hire me, I still have to maintain privilege because you're talking to me as if I am an attorney. And so there is a certain level of protection for that. And so when I'm going through, I am telling you exactly what you need to do, whether you hire me or not. And there, at the end of the call, you have been educated because you understand all of the documents. You understand why you need the ones that I'm suggesting. I'm telling you exactly what it's going to cost. It's a flat fee. And if you don't hire me, you know how to hold somebody else's feet to the fire. And you also know if they're overcharging you and if they're leaving something out. That last part is critical because, Jonte, I cannot tell you the number of people I've sat down with who have gotten the free will and trust from like their bank or somebody else created their documents. And because they didn't charge what they should have, or the person said, hey, I can't afford that. And instead of trying to work out a payment plan, their trust was not properly funded. So they had paperwork, but there were no assets in the trust. So it's like it didn't even exist. So all this work and money and time that has been invested, it meant nothing. With the children's documents, I don't know if enough of us really appreciate the fact that when we leave our kids with someone and they're small, that we really don't know what is going to happen when we're gone and if a plan has not been put in place. I didn't think about it. I knew that I was married, and so my husband, right? My mom, my sister, my dad. But what happens if none of them can't get in contact with any of them? Then social services comes and picks up your child, and your child stays in foster care until somebody can be contacted. And you're thinking to yourself, well, how often does that happen? How often do your people in your warm circle go on vacation? A couple of times a week. So if this tragedy happens while they are on vacation, and that's the only number that the school or your babysitter has, guess what happens with your children? Until you can get to where you need to be, or somebody else in that circle can be contacted. Because my mom is an active senior. She will hop on a plane in a minute. You know what I'm saying? So if she's gone, what happens? Thankfully, my daughter is grown now. She's in college now. But when she was small, when I was going through my health issue, we don't think like that. And I understand why we don't. Nobody wants to think about the end. But I'm asking you, instead of thinking about it from the perspective of death, to think about it from the perspective of love. This is your final act of love for the people that you care about and who are counting on you.
I love how you added that mindset shift because you're absolutely right. People don't want to think about death. If you start to talk about it in your 20s or your 30s, oh, you're being negative, and girl, you got a whole life ahead of you. What you talking about? And you just honestly, you just never know. I just love how you put that. Think of it from a space of love and honestly protection too, especially if you have young kids. I have a 6-year old. So I have to think of it from a place of love. And even though I'm 36 and I don't plan on leaving no time soon, I just don't know. And you have to think like that. You just don't know. But at the same time, you got those loved ones that are here now and you want to protect them and you want to show them that you love them by making sure you have those things into place. And thank you again, too, because you did include that disclaimer in there of letting people know I'm still not gonna tell you business to everybody, even if you hire me or not, because when you think about it, a lot of people only think of criminal defense attorneys when that is applied to, but no, that's literally law, y'all. Thank you for letting our audience know how that works as well, because I've heard some people say, "Girl, I can't go talk to them because they're gonna tell all my business." No, no, that's not how that works, y'all. I'm telling you, that's not how that works. There are ethics and all types of stuff in place. So definitely educate yourself. And again, Miss Lynita. I have enjoyed you, and we always leave with a legacy here on About Her Business. And I give you a couple of seconds to think about this one. When we think back to your legacy, what do you want to leave behind?
I want to leave behind people who know that I love them and that they have the evidence of a life well lived to know that it was true. So it wasn't just lip service for me. Everything that I did, you can look back and say, yeah, she really did care about me.
And I just been sitting here talking to Miss Lynita today. It has been a joy to me, and she's inspired me in ways she don't even know yet, y'all. And I genuinely feel like that's the legacy you really truly gonna leave behind. Just a whole lot of love and care. And again, thank you so much for your service and making sure everybody remembers to leave something behind and making sure we put those people in place so they will have something so you don't end up like me and my family. And y'all, we have reached the end of today's episode, but of course, y'all know I always get everybody's information. So, Miss Lynita, please let us know what states you're allowed to practice in. Let us know how we can sign up for your services. Let us know of all your speaking engagements coming up, your socials. Let us know all the details.
Absolutely. So the best way to contact me is through my website, which is getyourwillandtrustdonenow.com. So that's real easy. It truly is getyourwillandtrustdonenow.com. And on all socials, I am Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, Lynita. And follow me. And I normally follow back as long as you're not crazy and posting stuff that's inappropriate. I'm just being honest. I can't, can't be tied up in that energy, you know? As far as things that I have coming up next, so next month on June 21st, which is Father's Day, 6 p.m., I'm launching my new book virtually. And so you are invited. It is Prioritize You. It's a survivor's guide to putting yourself first. And then I have my speaking event, the all white brunch with Glam Bishop, Lily Mae Williams during Essence Fest in New Orleans. The July 4th weekend, it's July 5th, is the luncheon at 11 a.m. And so please join us for that. And then I have my retreat, Prioritize and Empower You, coming up October, Indigenous Peoples Weekend, which is Family Columbus Day weekend. So, yeah, tag me in.
Y'all, and y'all know how epic and iconic that all white party is during SSS weekend, y'all. It is a big deal. So if you can make it down to New Orleans, I'm here to tell you, you about to have a good time. So again, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me, Miss Lynita. And do you have any final words before we adjourn today's meeting?
You asked me the states I practice in, and I forgot to tell you. I apologize. So there's Alabama, Georgia, South, and North Carolina.
Absolutely. And so my people here in Alabama, you can give her a call, just like that big old sign that we have everywhere. Give me a call, Alabama. Give her a call, y'all. And with that, ladies, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thanks again to the founder of the LMB Law Offices PC, Miss Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, Esquire, for coming on and offering all her insights. And you be sure to subscribe to About Her Business wherever you receive your podcast so you never miss whenever we upload. Also, leave me some comments down in that comment section on which industry you think I should interview next. Until next time, keep those goals tight, that circle tighter, and that bank account growing.